deploy out. And also now we're operating on the information we have now. We have a bunch of protocols in the work that are coming from our end. That will put a real wrench in it because X28 is a hardcore burner. So X28, in my head, X28 was always designed because I had this idea since the start. X28 was always designed to usher in, I call it the renaissance of TitanX when it enters hyperdeflationary. It's going to force it to go hyperdeflationary, and it's going to give users such a good deal that it's going to be impossible to ignore. Even if they don't want to participate, they're going to be like, ah, shit, it's too good of a deal, I can't pass on. So it's going to force TitanX into hyperdeflation. So now we're operating on all the information we have currently with DragonX, Helios, the staking payouts, 369, the Hypervortex, etc., and the buy and burns within the TitanX core protocol. And then you have all the other protocols we have in the works, and Titan Farms, which is also going to be Titan Farms is actually really, really sick. They're also launching at roughly around that point. Yeah, things are looking good, man.
Dude, that's awesome, man. I absolutely love it. And I definitely want to ask you a little bit more about X28. But the last thing I want to do before just wrapping up the Hyper stuff, you can build on top of Hyper, and we haven't really seen any projects built on top of Hyper. But in your opinion, what do you think would be a beneficial project for the Hyper project or that little Hyper sub ecosystem in the TitanX ecosystem?
I spent some time thinking about this. So I think building on TitanX by default supports Hyper. So I think building on TitanX is the better option because whatever TitanX does, Hyper does by default because it's its main liquidity pair. So instead of focusing on this one segment, that could be a way to do it where people need to use liquid TitanX to enter the protocol and then it routes through Hyper. That way you can achieve both. You build on TitanX, but you push up the Hyper price through people interacting with the protocol. That will probably be the way to do it. But building on TitanX by default supports all build on TitanX projects because it's a main liquidity pairing. So I'm a bigger fan of building on TitanX. And if you do build something on Hyper, use liquid TitanX as a source and then run it through the TitanX Hyper liquidity pool. So then you push up the Hyper price in the process. You burn liquid TitanX, you push up the Hyper price in the process, and then your main liquidity pool would be Hyper because it has to route through the two liquidity pools. That's how I would personally build something on top of Hyper. Yeah, but building on TitanX by default is building on Hyper as well.
Yeah, that's great.